This time I'll call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. We have an agenda before us. Agenda item number 2 is to consider the approval of that agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening? If not, we'll operate under that agenda and move to agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 3 is to consider the approval of the minutes from the special City Council meeting that was held on June 26, 2018, as well as the minutes of the regular meeting that was also held on June 26, 2018. So the Council does have the minutes of both of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note at this time?
I make a motion to recommend the minutes, or approve the minutes, excuse me.
Motion by Jim.
I'll second.
Second by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And motion passes. Agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4 is the consent agenda. We'll bring the items up on the screen that are on the consent agenda this evening, and they include the application for the exempt permit for Holy Redeemer Church for September 30th, 2018, the authorization to declare a vehicle as surplus property for the police department, and the approval of the bills and the project payment. Is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants to remove for separate discussion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Craig. Discussion? Now we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 5, or the next agenda item actually is agenda item number 8. This would be the Broadmoor Valley resident discussion. The residents have asked to make a presentation, a discussion with the council, and you're going to be making the presentation, so I'll allow you to come. You can come up and introduce yourself and speak into the mic. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Misty Butler. I live at 127 E Street. I'm a leader with Asamblea de Derechos Civiles. And I'm a concerned resident of Marshall. I've lived in rental units in the town in the past. I don't currently, but some of them are great and well worth the money that you pay in rent. But I've also witnessed some that are not so great and risk the health and safety of residents who live there. I'm here today to ask the city to do more for those residents who are endangered. We need more legal protections for all of the people who want to rent their homes. I would like to ask that the city work with its tenant residents to create an ordinance regulating the health and safety of rental properties as soon as possible.
Okay. Thank you. You may as well stay up here. Are there questions or any discussion from the council?
Mayor,
David?
I trust you'll want to remind us all of your event this Thursday.
We do have an event this Thursday. It is starting at 3 p.m. And there is a walkthrough beginning at the storm shelter that at Broadmoor Valley where people can witness for themselves what the conditions are like there. And we're asking for community support in a plea for them to become compliant with Minnesota state housing law.
I do have a quick question. It's, you know, and I've been a landlord, I'm on the landlord side of this, and I understand, I know people who live in Broadmoor Valley, and I know the streets are in terrible condition. They're private streets, so that's an issue there. But have the clients, you have the landlord-tenant rights that the Attorney General,
We do.
And has been given to these folks so they know what their rights are, because there are legal rights that do protect them.
There are, and they are in violation of several of those.
Then has our building department, our ordinance department been contacted? Because if they're contacted, I know you guys have done inspections on properties.
Yeah, we handle issues anywhere on a case-by-case basis once we get a complaint, and we have followed up with some residents and tenants out there with concerns. We look at concerns as it relates to ordinance and housing code, and that's kind of where our jurisdiction lies, and we work with the owner to try to get satisfaction, and we check back with the complainant and see if they've gotten that satisfaction. That's our process, and then if we need to go further, then we turn it over to our city attorney through the misdemeanor process. So.
And also, the Minnesota Department of Health is in charge of the entirety of the park to verify compliance with statutes within Broadmoor Valley Park entity itself.
This is true as well, and we've met with Southwest Health and Human Services, who's conducting inspections on behalf of the Department of Health. We met with them a couple months ago to talk about complaints that we've received out there, and they'll be conducting an inspection this month.
So that was my question. There's ongoing process going on. I know, as Craig would always say, government works very slow.
At the speed of government. Yeah.
So, and I'd encourage residents who live out there in rental units, obviously if they live in their own house, that's their house, but if they're in rental units, to contact, and give Jason more work, you know. But we do have a department that does go out and enforce those ordinances, and that helps as you guys take steps up. So there is laws, there are rules that are in force right now.
That's what we
They are
advantage of-
enforced or enforced?
Enforce.
Enforce, but it takes time to enforce those rules. We need the complaints. Jason needs the complaints to take to the Department of Health. You got to take the correct steps.
Yep, and we have been taking.
Yeah. Unfortunately, government does work extremely slow, and I've worked on cases of this type too.
We've been working with the property owner out there who this spring as well, I'll say, promised improvements to the roadway network out there. We're still waiting to see some of that, but we've been having communications with the property owner and the Department of Health, and we're trying to work towards resolution out there. Like Councilman Lazinski said, any complaints or concerns can be brought to us, and we'll do what we can with our process, and we'll certainly copy and include the Department of Health inspector, which is Southwest Health and Human Services, in that process as well.
And that brings up the next question I have: is the city, is that just zoned as a mobile home park, correct?
R5,
what enforcement can we do for the roads? Because those roads have been terrible for 15 years.
I believe we have an ordinance provision that essentially states that roads on private property for businesses and parks like that must be passable. In some form, that's what it says. So we've been trying to work with that language with the property owner and saying that we don't think that these roads are in the condition that we would deem to be passable.
Well, I guess the main question, can we safely get a fire truck down those roads in a decent fashion?
I think it can be done, but they're not in good shape. They need to be improved.
And I know that both garbage collection and school pickup, for a while they would not go in there. I don't know if that has improved.
They were actually told they could not. The school was told they could not go in there. And there are special needs children who have IEPs that require door-to-door service, and they are not able to be picked up at their homes.
So the school said they couldn't go in there, or the owner said the school couldn't?
The owner said the bus company could not go in there.
Okay.
I believe that there's a restriction on the weight of vehicles that can go into the park. That's one of the rules and regulations that I've read. I met with your group the other day, and I feel like what we need to do as a city is to have the L&O Legislative and Ordinance Committee have an open meeting with the general public, have landlords, tenants there, and we need to look at the possibility of having a rental housing ordinance. I know a number of cities have those. Fairmont has one, Duluth, Jackson has them. Should the city of Marshall have rental housing ordinances for the protection of tenants and the general public, and look at building conditions, health and safety issues, and so forth? But it should be something where we get input from both landlords and tenants and come up with, and make a decision. Do we need rental housing ordinances or not? And if we need them, what are we going to include in them? And so we need the public involvement in this. And we're not going to be able to take care of that discussion here tonight. But I think it's a matter that should be referred to the L&O committee, and they can look at it and get all kinds of public input. And I believe that if we do develop ordinances, we can come up with common sense ordinances that aren't going to cost a lot of money to the landlords or the tenants, but also offer protection that the tenants deserve. They deserve a certain amount of protection. And I always use the 3 E's in government. We need to be effective, efficient, and economical in what we do. And that's the way we should approach the idea of housing ordinances too. Anyway, that would be my recommendation, that this matter be referred to L&O committee and get broad-based input from the public and decide what we should be doing next. Because this is, to the tenants, it's a very serious issue, and they want something done about it. And we need to investigate it further. And not rush into something, but at the same time, not waste a lot of time and never get it done. But it's worthy of our discussion. We owe it to the citizens of Marshall that rent property. And as you mentioned, there are some very good landlords and there are some not so good landlords. And but we do need to make sure that the rights of tenants and landlords are protected. And we want to work with both landlords and tenants to come up with a good solution to the problem.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that part of this is, I think there's the long-term thing to look into the rental ordinances and such, but I think there's also tools that are available, like Jason said, both through the city, but also through the Department of Health. And as I understand, Southwest Health and Human Services has the delegated authority for the licensing of the trailer park. And unfortunately, I'm dealing with a couple of similar situations a few hours north of here with mobile home parks in similar or worse condition. And I'm not sure what the reasoning is for it, apparently some of the reluctance or what, but I think that having Jason and our building department work hand in hand and figure out how those roles overlap, because obviously we both have portions of this that we enforce. The health department isn't going to enforce our streets and some of the building code things, but I believe they certainly do the health and safety piece of that, and the mobile home park is obligated to provide a certain level of service that is safe and healthy for the residents. And I think that open line of communication, and I think that I know that Southwest Health and Human Services to probably take that delegation that they get from the Department of Health very seriously to enforce that licensing and inspection. So I think that it is prudent that we do it quickly. I don't think that any time that we're taking people's health and safety into account, especially for housing, that we should do a delay. I think that reviewing our ordinances and looking at the tools that we have, I think that's always a good step to see where we're at. But I think it needs to be a parallel path, and I would also encourage the urgency to continue to put pressures on to have those things take bear.
And I want to make it clear too that I'm not talking just about taking care of the mobile home park issue, which is an important one. I'm talking about all rental property in the city of Marshall. We need to make sure all rental property has adequate protection for tenants. And I'm not saying, I'm saying this is an issue that we need to investigate further. We need to get broad-based input from landlords, tenants, the general public, and see what needs to be done. Because evidently certain things aren't being done now to help tenants.
Yeah, and I think Glenn and Craig, you're actually both saying the same thing in that there's a longer-term challenge to look into, but there's an immediate concern also, and that is the immediate issue is compliant with our current zoning and building regulations, which is the responsibility of the city, and is it compliant with the Department of Health regulations? And both of those deserve immediate attention which is, I think, is what Greg you're saying.
Yeah.
What Glenn you're saying is, yes, but there's also this longer term issue about rental ordinance. Quite honestly, that is a longer term and will take more discussion. And what Misty is presenting on behalf of your group and your residents is that it's fine, but we have issues right now that should be addressed.
And just one thing too, and I know Misty, and I'm sure all of the people that are here that are residents of the park understand too that we want to do this, that we don't create a situation either that we displace people. You know, so we have to be mindful of that too. You know, sometimes we swing the pendulum and we swing it too hard, and we get some unintended consequences. So we have to do it with patience, you know, but firm. And you know, reasonable timelines for reasonable measures, but you know, there's a difference between taking time to do it right and stalling, and we just need to make sure that we keep good pressure and get that done. And I know Jason, our building department, will do that, and I think as a city we can cooperate with Southwest Health and Human Services and help them task their part too for the benefit of everybody there, including the owner. I mean, the owner needs to be profitable, and you know, in order to maintain it. So it's a balance, and we need to have that housing be affordable, but it needs to be livable too.
I also commend you and your residents you represent on bringing this issue forward. And you know, your next step probably, we know our next step, the city, Jason's department, and communication with Southwest Health and Human Services, and communication with our legal. Your next step is your open meeting and tour that will be this Thursday.
Right.
I know you invited all of the council to come. I have a conflicting meeting I can't attend, but I know others will be there. So,
Excellent.
any other questions or issues or anything we haven't talked about?
I just want to thank you for coming forward, and that's how things problems get solved, is people come forth and bring forth the issues and make the council aware of it, and once we're aware of the problems, we can take steps to solve those problems. So thank you for your work and the other people that are working with you and trying to solve this problem. Thank you.
I think just a note too, we have to be careful. I think we can only let 3 people be on the tour. Otherwise, it's an open meeting, and we'd be violating the open meeting law. So there may only be 3 of us there.
I was just going to comment that
If a 4th shows up, somebody's got to leave. We'll have to draw lots.
Only 3 of us show up. It's not that we don't care. It's that legally we can't have more than 3.
Right.
But that'll work itself out. So, Dennis, is that your point?
I was going to mention that
An inspection with our building department and the Department of Health was scheduled also for the 12th, but so as not to draw away and divert from the attention of your event, we've rescheduled that inspection to a later date.
Okay.
But yet, I mean, there were a number of things that coincidentally came together for the 12th, but your event is taking center stage now.
Okay.
The inspection that's been rescheduled.
yes,
And we are also meeting with the property owner Friday of this week in town, so that schedule is happening as well. So,
Obviously, you're in contact with Sharon, you're in contact with Jason, so those are the right contacts. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move then to agenda item number 9. This is a discussion with Engen Associates. This is the update about the City Hall discussion planning. So, Barbara, I saw you pointed at, so.
I drew the straw.
Yes.
Fine-hearted delegation.
And,
Winning straw, right?
Exactly.
I know
Good evening.
the building committee had a previous meeting just before this meeting, so covered a lot of detail. I think you're going to give the high-level kind of summary.
Right, that's exactly right. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm Barbara Marks. I'm with Engen Associates, and I've been asked to kind of give you a overview of the process and where we're at right now. I just wanted to let you know that we have take a step back, and at our last meeting we had addressed different sites, and we'd kind of narrowed in on the existing site of City Hall with the possibility of bringing the hotel site into the discussion. In the meantime, we've met with staff and we've done what we refer to as programming, and it's the time where we sit and talk to people about what they do, the space they need to do it, how well it's working, and how we can improve it. We met about 3 weeks ago with the committee and we reviewed 3 options, A, B, and C. And as a committee, we investigated different things that were positives and negatives on each plan. And we came together and decided to take a piece of 3 different plans and bring them together. And we came back today with a fourth plan, a fourth option, and we will begin moving forward with some schematic design on that to give you kind of a brief overview of some of the key points on that. What we talked about was through our programming, we've discovered that engineering and community services are the most visited departments, but we also have a strong desire to keep the council chambers in a place that has easy public access, so we're trying to keep everything on that main level. And I will throw in that main level is 2 to 3 feet up, so we do have an accessibility issue that we are dealing with and trying to accommodate. And then what we've done is we're looking at taking lesser visited departments and putting them up and putting them down. So our next step moving forward is developing that plan with the idea of accessibility, safety, and security. And then I would also like to point out that today we spoke with an interested party who expressed interest in maintaining the hotel property and looking at using that. And I don't know how, Sharon, do you want to maybe?
Sure. So our initial planning site design for the City Hall included demolition of the hotel and utilizing that space mainly for the purposes of accessibility and security. We all are aware of the accessibility issue with the current format of City Hall, and it does provide some additional parking too, but truly the intent is ADA and accessibility
and security.
But we did visit again with a business owner who expressed interest. So I guess the comment to the council, or maybe feedback you could provide myself, and I could forward it on to the architects, is should we stay in our own footprint and continue to work with this interested business owner on the Marshall Hotel, or potential redevelopment? I think there would be a possibility for that. It would mean, again, a different design and site plan, so to speak. I think originally the intent of the committee, and we pulled together the original committee members. Councilman Eric Kohler deferred to Councilman Lozinski, however, based on the expertise. And I think the original intent was to demolish, but after today's discussion, we're not entirely sure. So if you have feedback you want to share now or later, it would be helpful for the committee members or myself and the architects to hear that.
By that feedback, unless someone wants to make comments at this time.
My question would be, if there's an interested business owner who wants to develop it, I think that's awesome. However, it's got to go, and this is where devil's in the detail, it's got to be at the same pace that we're planning on doing things, because if they're right next to each other, and if he does something that says, well, wait, I don't have the funding for this and it's going to be delayed a year, that delays us, and I don't think that that's appropriate to do, because we don't want to get halfway down or in a phase where we have openness and it's got to be fixed, and you can't because you're waiting for the adjoining building to be fixed, and we end up taking over it again anyway. So I'd be concerned about that, and any contracting you do, you'd have to write that in.
I guess as we had looked at this over the past few years, space-wise, we do have adequate space in the building that we have. That's not really the question. To me, the opportunity of using that location adjacent to the property gives us the ability to put some added security entrances in, and it also, I believe, provides the remodeling considerable access to a lot of the infrastructure that needs to be replaced without tying or tearing into the old building. Perhaps as far as, we talked about putting an elevator to the outside, which maybe could be put inside or outside. I think some of the mechanicals are, well, actually in your latest version. Mechanicals are now downstairs.
Right.
In there. But, you know, if there's a cost advantage to, you know, there's certainly a cost in demolishing the building, the hotel building, but if there's a cost advantage in using that space to develop or redo the existing city hall, I think we need to get a pretty good idea what that is. If we do let somebody else develop the Marshall Hotel, which I'm perfectly fine with, but I'll say exactly what you said. If it needs to follow pretty close to the same pace as what we are, otherwise, as we commented earlier tonight, we're going to end up with a new building and a boarded up old building right next to us if we don't bring those two together. So we do need to really see how we can accelerate if there is an interest and move that in, or and then as well, what, you know, how would that affect your plans and what you're doing, and what's the cost impact with or without that open area?
Right.
We know it's parking was one issue. It's not a lot of parking spaces, but
I
think
would
there's other
throw in that
advantages.
the access is probably the bigger thing, and helping get the ADA compliance.
Right, and that's
Yeah.
a big deal.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think we need to make sure we understand really what would be that cost if we did not demolish it. You know, really, getting kind of back down to cost comparisons all the time, but you know, really trying to put a finger on what that is as best we can without doing too major detailed plans.
So my question is cost the leading factor, or is flow and workability the leading factor?
There's, yeah, you can't have, yeah, right.
No, I'm just trying
they
to
both
get a
need to
feel
be-
for what direction.
Are very significant in
Yep.
the process.
Maybe for me, that might be 40 and 60 respectively. Others
Okay.
may have a different ratio.
Okay.
The other part to all those questions about the neighboring property would be the viability and the feasibility of private development. And if it was, you just
Right.
had the conversation this afternoon,
Right.
and if it was an idea that the private developer is putting more detail to see is it feasible for
Right.
this private developer to do that. If the answer to that is yes, then we have a serious discussion.
Right. And where do we hold what we're doing?
Right.
I think it is feasible, but the timing may not match up.
My comment, the private investor who came forward has the ability to do it, but it comes down to timing. And that was the issue, and we brought it up, is he had mentioned maybe 3 years. I don't know if you threw that number out there. I don't think we want to wait 3 years. So that is, and the developer has the vision and the ability to do it. Now, will the bank say, go ahead and do it? That's a whole different story, too. Obviously, there'll be a bank involved with him as a private investor, says, no, this is not worth it. I think within the next time we meet, if he's going to come forward, knowing this gentleman, he will have something together for us, sure.
Okay. Other questions for Barbara?
I guess thinking about that, because I think about things in you know, cost obviously, but in rhythms. You know, what is the timing piece? So we're going to be dislocated from City Hall regardless of how we do this, right?
At this point, it sounds that way.
And it'd probably be for more than a year, or for a year at least. So at that point in time, if the developer comes back with a serious plan, the biggest disruption is moving. Once you're in place, no matter if it's temporary or not, at that point in time, 1 or 2 years probably doesn't make that much difference if we can get those pieces put together. So I would be more in support of that if he comes back like Jim says, and I have no idea who this is, but I trust that Jim knows him, and if it comes back like that, I mean, I would love to see us preserve the look heritage of that building on Main Street. You know, historically, I think that it's terrible if we have to tear down our history, but I also understand that these are public dollars that we're spending if we do it ourselves and not private. But if there's a private interest in doing that, I really want to give that room to operate And if we dislocate City Hall for 2 years or 3 years, at that point in time, really what difference does it make?
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
We'll move then to agenda item number 10. This is the resolution ratifying the improvements. Sharon, do you have discussion on this or Dennis?
Yes. One of the items that we discovered through our financial bonding process is that the resolution for Saratoga, Marguerite, and South Bend under Minnesota statutes 429 needs a 4/5 adoption, and it's based on the statute, and what the resolution essentially does is it is ordering the improvements and the preparation of plans and specs. Of course, as you know, we're well underway on these projects. We're not going to turn back, but to continue forward with the 429 finance plan, we do need 4/5 adoption, which would be a minimum of 6 in the affirmative, and I recommend adoption of this resolution.
Okay. Questions? I'd entertain a motion on the
I
resolution.
move the resolution.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John. Now discussion on the motion.
I do have a discussion on this motion because I know that this involves Saratoga, which, you know, obviously I'm not going to try and goof up our bonding, but that's when they came in way over, I shouldn't say way over, it came in 14% over its projected costs. And I have a hard problem with that, you know, now we're coming back to bonding when at the 4/5, I guess, I'm not blaming anybody here, but how did that get missed? That we needed 4/5 of the council? I just asked the question pointedly, how did that get missed?
I can tell you I wasn't aware of that requirement when it was presented the first time.
Nor was I. Now, should we have been? I don't know.
And I'm not pointing the finger, but yes, so.
Or was it bond council? Who knows?
Yeah, bound.
It is what it is now.
Right.
Yeah.
Because now if this doesn't happen to pass, what kind of pickle are we in? Because I'm still opposed to a project that came in over budget.
We did have the explanation though from the contractor when we awarded it as far as
I
the
get that,
reasons
but
for that.
yeah, I just.
And the one bid.
Then we had, it's, to me, it puts us as a council members in pickles that we're being forced to vote on something that's already started. It's a bad situation. And I don't like it, plain and simple.
Other discussion on the motion?
I guess I just want to debate a little bit on the word over budget.
Overestimated.
Or did some of the submitted bids, I mean, we're not, they submitted their bids, the subcontractors did. And is it the market that they submitted? Did they put in some of those bids higher? I mean, there's a lot of factors at play here.
Yeah, and I understand that because there is. And when the bid came in later in the year, because this project got pushed back into Memorial Day weekend, which is a bad weekend to send out. The bid was due the Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend. As somebody who bids projects like that, you're on a holiday vacation, you throw numbers together to make sure you're going to make money when you bid those projects. That's when this project came forward. I said, why don't we, rebid it? Summertime is a bad time to bid a street construction. It's just like I have an opportunity to bid a very large project right now for this fall. We're all busy. We're going to raise our prices. Where if we wait until winter time, oil's gone up. Now we don't know if oil's going to go up or down. I get that. So I truly believe if we waited till spring, we'd got a more favorable bid on that. If we rebid it this winter, and that's my opinion. I'm going to stick to it.
I dropped my ball and broke it.
Other discussion on the motion?
Have we run into this situation before about the 4/5 and so forth? And so, I mean, it's a learning experience, and so it's a lesson that we learn, and hopefully will not happen again. But it's just one of those things. It happened, and we have to learn from it and move on.
How did we be made aware of it?
Town council notified us.
So they discovered it after the fact also, but probably
Yes.
our bond council.
On council, yep.
is that something that they, when they come to our meetings, should, before we vote on certain things, maybe have told us or notified us? Is it a situation where in the future they can make a point of informing us of those types of things before they happen?
And so will local legal counsel advise you. Yeah, I mean, we're all aware of it, and everybody in the council, you know, and I'm certain that there have been contracts awarded in the past without the 4/5. But
other discussion on the motion.
I'm not, bond counsel was not aware of that. I did ask that question. We're not aware of this, that we did not achieve 4/5 prior. And this is a bond counsel. They should have notified us prior, in my opinion.
They're pretty solid normally.
And they're good at what they did. I don't know why they didn't notify us on this.
With that being said, I'm not going to put the city in a pickle and vote against this. But if it would come up again, no, I would not approve it a second time. So I will vote for this and not create a problem for our city staff, because they do work hard, and mistakes happen.
Thank you, Jim. Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes unanimously. Move then to the next agenda item, and so I'm going to go a bit out of order here because I have a feeling if we, talk about commission board liaison reports and council member individual items, especially council member individual items, a lot of people are going to be talking about water and flooding. So why don't we just get that out of the way right now? And Jason, I want to turn to you, and or Bob Van Moore is here from our wastewater department, if you want to give just kind of a brief situational update. I know I'm catching up here.
No, that's okay. I think what I'll do is I'll even just invite Bob up right away too, and then you guys can ask questions and we can just have a discussion about the events. Does that sound fair?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Is that okay with the council? Okay, good. Welcome, Bob.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You're all aware of it. The July 3rd storm, a lot of rain in a hurry. We did end up with a fair amount of basement backups again. Personally, I think this was the best response the wastewater and public works staff has had to any event in the past. So we actually really were on it early. It just was so overwhelming with the stormwater and flooded intersections. I've seen more flooded areas around town in different areas of town that we never usually see, and I think that was the big contribution of the sewer backups. I'm sure there was a lot of just water infiltration into the basements, and I don't know how many sump pump failures or anything like that, so there's quite a list of people that had damage, and we're still gathering data to try to figure out, was it sewer related, was it sump failures, was it just stormwater related. So we're still working on that. With the county hotline, I'm trying to get some information from them, and I've been plotting all the backups or any damage reports that we've had on a map, and I know public works staff will be looking at trying to make heads or tails of what happened, and if there's any ways that we can remediate this in the future, and just basically get a good feeling of what was happening where. So today we're just about caught up at the treatment plant. We ended up storing about 4 million gallons at the treatment plant. We did not have to bypass the treatment plant this time, which was a very exceptional deal for us. We did have 3 6-inch bypass pumps in different areas of town trying to relieve the sanitary sewers. We ended up with just about 15 million gallons that day. We're normally treating about 3 million gallons a day. There again, we've been banging our heads all along trying to figure out, how we can remediate this over the past 30 years, but we're definitely making a lot of strides. We can see a lot of the infrastructure improvements we've been making over the last 20 years are actually helping us, and we're still looking for the illicit connections, and we've had a couple leads here in the last week or so that we're doing some more investigating. So hopefully we can find a few of those direct stormwater connections that we can get out of our system, and they'll dramatically improve the situation. So I don't know, I got printed out a graph here of basically about a month's worth of influent flow data. I can kind of show you.
Bob, question for you while that's going around. Have you guys figured out, and this is probably a Larry Pofleet project that I bet you he's working on, what's the percentage in the entire sanitary collection system that's private line versus public line, all the connections to the residences?
We, generally speaking, it's about a 50-50 percentage of city-owned mains and then the private service laterals that come into the, so there's a tremendous part that's private that, we know we probably have issues on those. Clay service lines come from houses, there's some people that, potentially have roof leaders tied in somewhere where they shouldn't, and, it's things like that we were trying to find, so.
And there may have been some construction techniques in the 1960s where foundation tiles were directly tapped in, and that was a common construction practice at that time. The current owner may be unaware because that house is sold multiple times in between, and how would they know? And they are feeling good because they have a sump hole that doesn't collect water, and that's why, because
it's directly connected to the city collector.
Right. So
when you notice on that chart there, it's kind of from the end of June. We were tooling along really nice. So we got this 2-inch rain. You can see an increase in the flow there, and then all of a sudden on the 3rd of July we get this big rainstorm, and she just jumps right through the roof. The ground saturation plays a big part. This time of year, it's if there's nowhere for that water to soak into, it's going to pond up and flood our manholes in areas at intersections and things like that. So
that was a pure runoff event. I mean, we had 2 inches of rain a day and a half prior, and it was wet prior to that. So then when you get that 5 to 6 inches in a 5-hour period of time, that's all just sheet flowing off of all surfaces, including pervious surfaces. So,
Bob, from previous work that has been done, especially in the 1990s, we had an inventory of those service lines that were either clay or Orangeburg material. We still have that.
I don't know that we had a real good citywide inventory. As we do these projects, we can pretty much tell the neighborhoods that have the Orangeburg or the clay, or the newer ones are all plastic now. But so we got some good ideas of where some of these older areas are, and as we continue to do our road work and projects and sewer replacements, that's all things that are getting addressed. So
I think that's a good point when we meet with the property owners and we're doing these projects and we're doing the complete reconstruction, as we're bringing things up and putting their sewer, the connections in, and then going up to the property. I think we should really continue to work hard to encourage the property owner to go right to the foundation. I wish that was done. I've got a 100-year-old house, and I can only imagine, I've never had the guts to stick a camera down that pipe to look to see what goes from my house to the right-of-way, but I know what it is. I mean, without looking at it, I know what it is.
Yep.
I'm not helping the situation either.
I would add to that, when we have public informational meetings about our projects, we always speak with the homeowners about the conditions of the service pipes. We don't know them usually until we get into the project, but we do make it known that they're allowed to speak with our contractor to go further. They're allowed to get someone else to go all the way. And then if we notice anything, our staff on site with their service line, we do bring it to their attention, and we do say, your line is in poor condition. We highly encourage you to do something about this.
Yeah, and I think that's a great effort, and I think we need to just really continue to do that and keep pushing that, because I think there's a lot of buyback for us on that too, and I know we can't force that on the properties, but I think to continue that effort is really positive.
It's just a couple of other things to clear up that I've seen out in various media sites that maybe Bobby, you can clarify, is that we do not meter the sewage going into the system.
Yeah, I've seen some different, miscommunication and different things like that.
And maybe there's a few of those other items that have come up since that event that, misinformation that's been out there.
Wasn't a power outage at a lift station.
Yeah, our power outages there was at the water treatment facility, but not the wastewater plant or any sanitary lift stations. Everything performed fine on our end. Some pumps are an issue all the time. Nobody wants them in their lawn. You put them on the street and it bothers people because it's pooling in the end of their driveways. It's a bugger, and there's just not a real good way to handle it. But recommended is put it in your yards and put it out into the curbs. That way it gets away and into the storm sewer systems, and then it's gone.
It's probably inevitable that, it's understandable in the immediacy of an emergency, there's misinformation that gets reported, but in terms of the diversion channel, it did not overtop, it didn't come close, it did not flow backwards like was reported in the media. And so in fact, the flood control project worked absolutely as designed. So.
And I would add to that I don't think it could take twice as much water, but it can take a significantly larger amount of water. We were not at capacity in that channel, and we had some room. So. And
not only room in the channel, but
in the park before it would overtop the weir.
Would fill up the land that is between Victory Park, the river, and the railroad. So there's about 15 acres of impoundment that wasn't even utilized.
Right.
So it's good that there's that capacity.
Right.
Even though this was a historic record on the flow in Redwood River.
Yep.
Jim?
It has greatly improved, I'll agree. As somebody who's lived through 2 sewer backups, and, editorial to Bob Van Moore years ago by my wife, it has greatly improved. What I'm glad to hear is that we're still looking for improvements. I would, as my kids are here, I would say we went from 92 to 6, and I had 2 of them in 1 year, from a D to a B. As my kids would say in the Lozinski household, why isn't it an A? And I'm glad to hear that that's what you guys are looking at and saying, what is the problem? How can we keep preventing this? As we know, since I counted them, I think since 1996, historic flows, but we've had 8 or 9 of these rains. This is becoming a flooding event every 3 to 4 years. It's just our weather patterns. So unfortunately, we have to make our system handle it. And it is just the fact of what our weather patterns have become. And will this happen again? Hopefully not, but I would guess within the next 4 years, we're probably going to have another event like this. So I'm glad to hear that you're not happy with it. That you're I am. That you're looking, let's keep working on it. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, my goal is 0 backups. I've been through 2 myself, and while I'm out working in the city, I've got 2 feet of sewage in my basement. So it's no fun, and it's horrible. And
it is.
For anybody. I just wouldn't put this on my worst enemy, I guess. So yeah, we're doing everything we can, and we're open to any suggestions. So.
Bob, you're gathering data. How are you getting information from residents who have had sewage backup? Was there a notification in the paper to call your office, or?
Actually, through the city clerk's office, they were told to. There's been a couple media announcements to please call in with any damages. The Lyon County has the hotline going currently, where they're gathering data, not only from Marshall but all Lyon County. I expect to get a copy of that, and then we will try to transfer that all on and kind of plot it out as a citywide of where the issues were, and kind of look at is there anything that we can improve on, whether it's maybe increasing some stormwater system somewhere or doing different things. Nothing else. Maybe in the next emergency we'll know we'll have to put a relief bypass pump in this neighborhood versus where we were putting it before, So it's things like that we can do some planning on and hopefully make some improvements.
One thing to remember with the storm system too is that you don't design storm systems to accommodate these flows readily. This was probably over a 2-day, 3-day period. It's probably a 100-year type of event or 0.1% chance of happening event. So when you get localized flooding on streets, that's kind of what's supposed to happen. You just want to minimize it to the greatest extent practical. So.
The other communication tool that was highly successful was social media, and I think Alex did a nice job.
Absolutely.
Social media, that's where kind of request for reporting was done also.
With that being said, Jason, I agree with you. These used to be 100-year events. They're becoming every 5 years. It's a problem with these 100-year events.
Yeah, we're working with
They're becoming very common.
When we do our stormwater designs and our reviews, we're working with the latest precipitation estimates that are put out from NOAA and the like. And they were recently updated within the last couple of years, and they did increase substantially from what the old numbers were. And you may see that trend continue, but...
Other input? Greg?
One other thing I'd like to, again, thank Bob and the Public Works folks that when this whole series of storms started in June, some of our neighbors cried out for help, and there's a system in place called WARN, Minnesota WARN. It's the Water Agency Response Network, and it's a federally encouraged mutual aid agreement within states between the stormwater, wastewater, and public water supply. Marshall's one of the cornerstone members of that, but there was a pretty urgent call out that came from a community through kind of the back door through the State Emergency Operations Center from the city of Slayton, and we did a WARN activation between Slayton, with Marshall being a loaner of equipment, to take pressure off of them early, because they were one of the first communities, along with Blue Earth, to get in trouble, and Marshall did a lot to help them, and that just says a lot for who the community is and the people that we have here, and I want everybody to know that that's also recognized. That was talked about at least 2 different times, 2 different days at the State Emergency Operations Center. So the governor's office hears about that. The legislators hear about that. Our agency's been feeding the governor's cabinet and the legislature for about a week now with information about the different communities, both feedlots, wastewater, and then the debris for flood waste or flood management debris. I just want to thank the Marshall for our public works people for what they do, and not only in the community but how they reach out in the area too. So I just think that's a real positive. Thanks, Bob, and thank you guys for doing all that.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's.
I know Sharon, I believe you reached out to the administrator and Tracy. I spoke with the mayor of Tracy too, and Minwarn covers the equipment. We also offered expertise we have staff that have expertise that can be helpful to communities like Tracy. So, John?
I guess just, as we're talking about this, probably a good time to bring it up that, we've had a number of residents that did have damage in their basements and had to basically tear out their basement, some completely, some partially up. And we do have a process and a requirement that was put out on social media as far as a demolition permit. I would like to keep that and encourage that, because I think part of that permit process gets you the information that you want very specifically in locations. But I would offer a motion at this point, if I could, that we would waiver any cost to that permit for anyone who's had damage in their or needing demolition related to sewage or water backup in this event. I don't think we need to
for demolition.
For demolition.
A motion by John, seconded by David.
I don't believe there's a cost to a demolition permit.
No, there isn't.
There's no cost to a demolition permit.
You want to withdraw that motion?
I'll withdraw the motion if there's no cost.
All costs for any sort of work would be covered under one building permit usually, so for demo and install, but the cost is mostly for material and labor, so there might be some labor that gets added in, but it might be minimal. It might be more so if you were to waive the cost on a building permit for rebuilding. But
right, that might be a real nice.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
We did discuss this briefly about waiver, and it's not to be heartless, but we have to kind of be careful on what the parameters would be, the start end date, and what would be the benchmarks for waiving the fee. Other communities who have gone through flooding events or disasters, they've debriefed after they've done waiver of fees, and they found that insurance typically covers the fee.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and there is work involved by staff. The fee goes towards a purpose. So I recommended to the staff initially when this was brought up that maybe we don't want to consider it. I mean, obviously you're the council and it would be your decision, but I just put that forward that a recommendation from other communities that have gone through this is that you do not waive fees for a couple of reasons. One is it's typically covered by insurance, and then there is work involved.
And that's, and I agree with Sharon, because I also don't want to be heartless. I do it for a living, but are we opening Pandora's box? I am heartless, no. But are we opening Pandora's box? We did it for the people at the basement. Now we get a hailstorm. Now we have a windstorm. Where do we shut Pandora's box?
One other thing that I have in this is that, I agree. I think that opening that up, it's a great gesture, but I think we are creating maybe potentially something we can't get the lid back on. The other part of that is insurance for this type of flooding. A lot of people, unless you have special riders, don't have sewer backup, you don't have sump pump failure, unless you have specific flood insurance. If it came over the threshold of a door or a windowsill, you're not covered for that. I found out that my insurance, which I thought had a pretty good policy, doesn't even cover seepage in the basement for damage. Okay, so my daughter's house in Vesta we're on our own. Okay, and it is what it is. And the permit is really, quite honestly, the small part of the whole project. While it's a nice gesture, it's probably going to be worth less than the hassle it causes the city to the resident. I think that any other kind of help that we can offer our residents to try to recover and become whole is great, but I don't think waiving permit fees is maybe the best approach.
The other thing that on that line, there's plenty of assistance out there. Governor Dayton just declared, I think, Lyon County a disaster. Then that opens up FEMA assistance to cover non-insurance covered stuff. Potentially, right.
That the process that takes is that, the state declared the disaster, which then we go in and apply to FEMA Region 5, which will push that up to Washington and ask for the declaration. Last number I heard is we were at 7.7 million. And so we're within the threshold of getting the disaster declaration. Now, FEMA only covers public infrastructure. It does not cover private property, private structures. That's SBA and some other things that come into play then. And then the legislature also typically in the larger disasters where there are unmet needs, and it comes somewhat pretty good ways down the road, we'll open up other avenues, typically sometimes grants, but usually low to no interest loans.
One other item on that as well, and talking with and at least one insurance adjuster, that those who do have insurance, they do have a cap of $10,000. And if you've got sewer backup, I know at least in one case where the resident just installed the week before a new water heater, and now since it's sewer in there, the water heater's got to come out, the furnace has got to come out, a whole list of the wash machine, dryer have got to come out. It didn't take long at all to hit the $10,000 mark. Yeah. So, I understand. Insurance covers it if you're low enough, but we've had residents that basically lost their entire basement, and that's it. They're not going to be made whole by the insurance.
Well, let me ask you this question, John, since you made the motion. Would you be more...
There is no motion on the
Well, there is no motion.
We retracted the one for the...
I stopped.
Since
I'm
we...
sorry.
Yeah, before I could do anything on the
Well, because
permit,
for discussion purposes, how about if we cap the fee at, let's say, a building permit for basement remodel through December 31st, cap the fee at $100. And this is just for discussion. It's not a motion. That's something... Because then you guys still get your value. There's still a fee for the work that it takes to do the basement. That's a gesture from the city to the folks who had their basements flooded. And I'd be willing to make that a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion by Jim, seconded by David for building permits for the purposes of reconstruction of flood damage.
Water remediation in basements.
And for calendar year 2018.
Correct.
Capped at $100.
That is correct.
Jason, you have that?
That's Kyle.
Or Kyle?
Jason sits over here.
You guys look nothing alike.
I was also
don't know why I
listening
said that.
intently.
Jason's got it too.
Sorry, Bob.
Okay, now discussion on the motion.
I'm not debating the motion. I do want to comment to one of the other areas of assistance which potentially a city could get involved with would be abatement of property value taxes if there's enough damage. And the threshold, I believe, is 50%. 50% of the structure or property. I mean, our city assessor would have more detail, and there's an example of a parameter. You have to meet at the 50% threshold. We don't believe in the city of Marshall that any of those homes have met that amount of damage. We may offer assistance to the city of Tracy through the county to help them with their assessment if it gets to that point for them. But I just put that forward as an example of a threshold.
Thank you, Sharon. Other discussion on the motion? Not everybody understands the motion. We'll call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Any other discussion on this? Thank you. And as been said before, thank you to our wastewater and streets and all the public works staff. Thank you to our public safety staff who's not represented. Utility staff and administration and Kyle, and we had a team that was put together that responded.
They were out. I was out at 6 in the morning driving. Like I was a looky-loo, and our city staff was out and about, and as a city council member, police officers blocking roads, they make you proud. They made me proud.
Jim was so proud he called me in the morning just to review it at about 6:15.
I knew you were stranded at Chautauqua.
I was stranded at Chautauqua.
Thank you. We'll move then to agenda item number 11, the council member board liaison reports. Regional Development Commission has their annual meeting this Thursday here in Lake. I'll be in attendance at that. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Library board met yesterday. Probably the biggest item that we discussed was there's some building issues, some windows on the one wall where with this driving rain, we've had some issues, and Southwest Glass is helping with a plan to kind of seal up some windows, but we had an awful lot of water come in. We didn't have anything seriously damaged. Luckily, our staff was all on top of that, but it's definitely an issue that we need to continue to work with. And then I know that Dean and the Street Department, Public Works Department has been working. There's some settling on some of our front entrance slabs, and we think it's because of how the roof drains. So again, Dean and our staff have been great at assisting with things going on at the library, which I think is great. But other than that, things are moving forward. We'll be continuing to move forward, working with the city on the budgeting process too. We understand we're a big piece of that budget, so we're looking forward to continuing to work forward on that. And that's really all I have.
Great. Steve?
There was no meeting of community services, cable, and EDA met, but I was chaperoning a church youth group of 62 young youth and getting no sleep there. So I'll defer that to Mr. DeKramer.
Glenn?
It's my understanding Planning Commission is not meeting this month. Public Housing Commission met yesterday, and as of July 1st, 2018, all the units are now smoke-free. We got an update on the washer and dryer appliances at the different rental units, and the new owners took over operations on July 1st. They're starting to order some new appliances and repair some of the other ones. And I was looking at the budget, and in the budget we have $4,500 of revenue from those appliances every year, and it's now estimated we're going to get about $600 to $700 per month through the income we get from the people that operate the washers and dryers in the different rental units. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. John?
Well, I can inform Councilman Meister that he didn't miss anything on EDA because our meeting got canceled. We did attempt to auction off some lots that were out in the Parkway Edition, but we received no bids, and the meeting was canceled.
David?
My boards have not met in the last reporting cycle, and I will not have anything for individual member items either. Thank you.
And Jim? Then we'll move then to agenda item number 12, council member individual items. Greg, let's start your end.
Said enough already tonight, thanks.
And Steve?
Couple of things, two things specifically. There's a lot of communities that after they have big events, storms, trauma, somehow they have debris days where they just put their stuff out, and there's no cost to load it up and dispose of it at the landfill. And since this is a Lyon County-wide thing, is there an idea to do that, or have we ever entertained that? It would have to be mutual with the county.
The city of Marshall has done that before. We did it after the storm 7 years ago. They picked up tree branches. And after our basements flooded in '96, we did set dumpsters out on the streets for people to throw stuff. So that there is a precedent that we have done that. I couldn't tell you what that cost was, well, it was 22 years ago. But I do know that the city of Marshall has done that after storms. And
Our staff conversation was that we weren't sure if we had enough damage to warrant that type of response, and it's kind of different than cleaning up tree branches when you're taking everything from someone's basement too. So that where do you draw the line, and how do you respond to that appropriately?
There's a
It
caution.
wasn't done at this time, but yes, you're right to bring it up.
The only and they're good. Those are good programs to do, but it does take a little bit of front time because we need to man those to make sure that we're only getting in there what we need. Because there's in the hierarchy of waste, the household waste has to be separated out. The electronic waste has to be separated out. The food waste has to be separated out. Because if people had appliances that got wet, there might be freezers or refrigerators down there in the basements that are going to go out as solid waste. So you have to deal with it. You don't want people digging that rotting food out of there. There's a whole other issue. And then you have the wet waste. So it's doable. And that's all I did today was working with communities, setting up temporary transfer stations to take that kind of stuff. And some of them got started absolutely right. Others didn't do so good. And now we're trying to go and get the horse back in the pen and get things back on the right without kicking people. Because all of these people that are doing this are victims. They're not doing anything intentionally wrong. They're victims, but some, for whatever reason, didn't get started right. Now it's hard to get it gathered back in. So if we do that, it's a great idea. We just need to really do it with a lot of planning and a lot of thought. And then we need to man the receptacle so we can coach the people to make sure that people don't unintentionally do something wrong.
The other point or the other difference is Marshall doesn't have organized collection. We have haulers that bill and contract, and so it's probably more common in probably smaller communities that have city-operated collection. Sometimes that's contracted, but all to one contractor. So.
And I haven't confirmed this, but I think our contractors right now are out of receptacles. I haven't verified that, but that's the word I get, is that everybody that's got roll-offs has them somewhere under contract right now.
And then the other thing on that is a constituent brought up to me, a lot of communities will have this like citywide rummage sales, and then shortly after that they allow people to put their stuff out on the street, and then it's just so say the citywide rummage sale ends on a Saturday, well then they put all their stuff on the street, and Sunday till the next Saturday, if Lazinski has something that didn't sell in his garage sale and I want it, I just go pick it up and I take it.
I go to his house and get stuff.
I know, so do I. We're not supposed to tell him that. But that was something I thought, that's not a bad idea. Then you're just kind of exchanging for free. So something to think about.
You go first. I'll come into your.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And that's it.
Len?
I have nothing.
Jim?
I have nothing.
John? I have nothing. Okay. Very good. We'll move then to agenda item number 13. Staff report, Sharon.
Mr. Mayor and Councilman, I was out last week, unfortunately, but I did appreciate the contact with the staff. Did get an early phone call from both the chief of police and our fire chief, which was much appreciative, and then a conversation with the mayor early that morning as well. And since I wasn't there, it's really hard to kind of know what's going on until you see some pictures and get more data. And then Glenn Olson was the point of contact when I was gone, and one of the reasons that was for the potential of a situation like we had last week. So I really appreciate his assistance and his updates provided to me. And that's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
We'll add the, we had discussion probably within the last month about the expectation of the HIMSS training. Was pretty timely that
Yep.
HIMSS training the council members can do online is important. Jason?
I can just offer some project updates. Our contractor on the Marguerite and South Bend project has started preparing for some concrete placement, so they'll start to see that start to shape up a little bit on Marguerite. On the South Bend side, I think they're preparing the gravel subbase and moving in that direction as well. On Saratoga, they'll still be working between C Street and Southview for the next couple weeks for sure. They're working on the gravel subbase and the tile for the road at this point. And I think next week they'll start removing concrete and maybe placing concrete within the next week and a half there as well on that stretch. And potentially next week they would start on some water main work out in front of the fire hall. So I think it's possible we'll see the roadway surface from C Street to A Street be pulverized and put back in place. So they're starting the process of preparing to do the utility work. Commerce Park has been slowed substantially by the rain over the last few weeks, so there's not much to report there, but I think that's kind of a general update.
Jason, one of the things that I just want to let you know, maybe it bears discussion with the contractors, but since I live right there, two things. Those dumper trucks, as they're coming off Saratoga and making their turn onto Southview and then turning onto Shepherd, it's happened 3 times since it's been going. They blow the stop sign. Just blow it, and they're moving. And come out, and it's like, oh, I was just about to go, and I had to hit the brakes.
So they're not
times.
stopping while
They're
leaving
not
Saratoga
stopping,
and
coming
getting
off
onto
Saratoga
Southview?
onto Southview. Yeah,
Okay.
they just grow up that lump, and then they're going the side traffic, the diversionary traffic down to Shepherd. There's a lot, and people are flying down that road. There's a lot of kids there, so we need to slow people down and just remember safety first.
Okay, we'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
Well, public safety, you could probably put the speed trailer on the Shepherd.
Yeah.
We can reach out.
Good. Okay. Dennis?
I don't have anything as exciting as all of the water talk, so.
Agenda item number 16 then is the pending agenda items there for your information. Agenda item number 17 is the information items, building permits. Agenda item number 18 is the upcoming meetings, which brings us then to agenda item number 19. Motion to adjourn by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion. We'll move to a vote. We're adjourned. Motion passes.
Perfect. I can lie to you.